Square Enix has finally done it. Final Fantasy XVI has finally done it. When it comes to what they ultimately want to do with the modern age Final Fantasy game, I think that this has been a struggle that Square Enix has been going through for the past decade plus with the Final Fantasy franchise, and they finally figured out the right balance of story, the right balance of combat, action, gameplay to really truly make the type of modern age Final Fantasy game that doesn't rely on previous characters like Final Fantasy VII Remake or like any other remakes that they would do for this game. I think that since 2010, since we got Final Fantasy 13, there's been a little bit of an identity crisis or a little bit of a problem when it comes to Square Enix. A little bit in terms of how they function. They've wanted to create the game like Final Fantasy 16 is, but I think at this point, even with everything they've done before, because they've had talented developers, they've had people in there that know what they're doing, but there wasn't enough data transitioning from what Final Fantasy used to be to at this point with various different games to truly get the game to sell to the modern audience. But I think that they've finally been able to do that with Final Fantasy 16. Many felt that Final Fantasy 15 could be that game, but ultimately, while that's a good game, I think that Final Fantasy 16, especially after this demo, people are thinking that this is way better. Now, let's talk a little bit about this demo, because they did release a demo and some people are calling it a masterclass in how to market your game. And I think that, yeah, depending on the circumstances, depending on the situation, when you go from one style to another, you absolutely need to bring a demo. You absolutely need to bring the goods, and you absolutely need to give the public confidence in your game, in your vision, when you're changing things up so much. This isn't a typical Final Fantasy game, but that's okay, because Final Fantasy has always reinvented itself over the years. This is more of not necessarily a non-RPG, but this is more of a game that's more about action RPG, like really heavy on the action, and even a singular person where you control that person and you have people helping you, but you're still in control of that one character. So more like an action game like Devil May Cry or Bayonetta, but heavy on the Final Fantasy, heavy on the RPG route. So it's not a full-on action game. It's not a full-on traditional JRPG or RPG. It's a nice blend of the two that really creates something special. Now, let's just talk about this. The graphics in the demo, and I know that there's going to be updates. We're going to talk about this in just a bit after they said that there isn't going to be a day one update, but we're going to talk about that. But the graphics in the demo, there's been some talk about this when it comes down to it. And I think that if you're playing on the performance mode, it looks solid. There's some areas that maybe aren't the best in terms of what PlayStation 5 can offer, or maybe not as high end as, like, let's say Horizon Forbidden West, or maybe even God of War Ragnarok at times. But for what this game is trying to do, the scope and scale and everything that's going on, it's pretty good. I think the graphics are solid in this game, and it performs well. Now, there are sometimes, which we'll get into in the gameplay, that maybe it doesn't perform the best when it comes to frame rate, even on the performance mode, but there should be some updates, and I think that it still plays very smooth even when those things are going on. But for the most part, I had no issue with the performance in the game. Now, the only thing that I did have an issue with when it comes down to the gameplay or the performance or whatever you want to call it was that there was no destructible environments. Instead, like, if there's a destructible place, like, you actually have to do a button prompt to, like, you hold down R2 or whatever the case is and you break it yourself instead of just being able to swing your sword and break stuff, maybe collect items. I mean, I've always liked that, and games like DMC and especially Bayonetta 3, for example, have destructible environments in there. It's always nice to have that, but they don't have it in this game, and it is what it is. At least in the demo area, it was pretty much everything's really just constructed a certain type of way, and if you try to slash it, you don't see any type of damage to it or anything like that, which is kind of a bummer, but not that big of a deal in terms of the overall what they're trying to do with this game. Now let's talk about the story setting, because I think that this is where this game excels better than all of the more modern end Final Fantasy games, man. The story setting, the pace, the tone, It's very good. It's very good. And really, it's got like a Naruto style story to it. You've got essentially these Jinchurikis that are entrusted to each of the areas or nations, and those are big weapons that that nation uses to defend itself and everything. And there's a whole story of them fighting against each other and all sorts of stuff. Man, it's just dope. I just had a grin to my face, but at the same time, it was emotional. It was passionate. It really drew about, even though I'd really not known those characters outside of what I've already covered, obviously, so I've seen the cutscenes and I've seen certain stuff, but I didn't want to consume everything because I still wanted to have some surprises before I played. But they did a great job of endearing you pretty quickly to the characters in there. At first you feel like you don't care, but then instantly, once things just start picking up, man, you really start to get into it. So I love what they did. And they have an incredibly unique and innovative feature. It's actually kind of like a feature taken from Triangle Strategy, but modified and maybe even made a bit better, because at any point, if you're not sure about the story, I think they call it like the ATL, Atlanta Stomp the Yard system. No, they call it like the ATL, and it's essentially it's like the active time learning, or you can just know what's going on in the story. You can press the button and bam, it'll pop up, say, hey, this is what's going on and all that. And that's really good for long RPGs, or just if you don't remember stuff. Triangle Strategy had it to where you can press a button anytime someone's talking, and it'll tell you the breakdown of that character, what allegiance they have, and everything. Usually a nefarious picture if they're a bad person, but then also more of a mellow picture if they're more of a good person. So I like the whole story interventions and story type of buttons that you can easily prompt up and make sure that you know what's going on. So that was awesome as well. Really love that about the Final Fantasy XVI demo. But I think that when it comes to Final Fantasy, the gameplay needs to be on point. And I think that this game, like I stated in my opening little spiel, this game with the gameplay does an incredible job of having the moves just feel very fluid. When you start playing, you have your magic that you can just start firing off. So if you're at a distance, you never feel like you have to get too close at times. You can keep your distance and still rack up, hit some magic damage. But when you just start playing the game, it just feels great. If you've played DMC, if you've played Bayo, you're gonna feel right at home with Clive's skills. There's some stuff that's exactly like Dante. He has a stingers, Bayonetta has the same thing. There is a drop air attack. Now, it's not exactly like, you know, DMC. You're not going to be doing 5 million 100 hit combos and stuff like that in stylish rankings, although they do have some stuff like that where you kind of go unga bunga on different things. But I think that what they've done with this system is that they've made it into a little bit of a rhythm to where it feels more grounded, like an action RPG, like a traditional action RPG. But then again, it feels a bit more fluid than what you would play in another RPG, like maybe Xenoblade, or maybe a game like Star Ocean or other action RPGs. It feels a bit more than that when it comes to the action part, as if it's not being kind of like toggled to like the party system and all that, as if you're playing one of those singular Bayonetta or also DMC games. So it's a nice in-between. It's like went somewhere in between that DMC, that action RPG, and then bam, you have right in the middle there, it's Final Fantasy, which is great. I think that's exactly what they're going for, because they already have another RPG, more of a toggled in with the party system and action and stuff like that, with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth coming. So there's no point in having two games do the exact same thing. So I think that this is actually a benefit for Final Fantasy XVI more than a negative thing, in my opinion, at least. Now, I think that with the responsiveness of the controls, they do a great job with that. Every time that I pressed the button, it felt pretty good to play. I like the fact that you have like magic burst combos. You do 2 hits with the sword, hit him with the magic, 2 more hits with the sword, hit him with the magic. And if your timing is off, you're gonna get kind of like the not necessarily best combo meters, not be able to get the most stagger built up. I love what they've done with the combat system, the staggering, what they've put in there, how you have like the little phoenix thing that you can do by holding down the button. It is just a really, really well done system, and you can tell that that combat director from DMC5, who essentially took everything that he learned from the DMC series, everything that he's learned from action games, and put it into Final Fantasy, and then marred it with, hey, let's have it a bit more grounded, not quite as crazy as that, but hey, let's not hold back on what Clive can do and the powers and abilities. So I think that it was very, very well done, and I think that it easily surpassed the vanilla Final Fantasy 15 in terms of responsiveness and combat and fun. I instantly had way more fun playing Final Fantasy 16 than Final Fantasy 15. Now, if that's going to be better than the overall result of, like, let's say Final Fantasy 15 Royal Edition, I think for some people that's left to be seen, because you have the rotating party members, you have all the different abilities. They did clean things up quite a bit, but me personally, I'm thinking that it will be. This feels like it's going to be a lot better, play better, and just overall be a better game. Maybe not from a content standpoint, but just from a structure, story, setting, everything standpoint. Outside of that, like, I think that it's definitely going to be there. Obviously, it can't match all the different content that Final Fantasy 15 got and all that. It's not going to do that, but I think that it does so many other things very well. It's going to surpass it in a lot of categories there. Now, I think that your team members do seem kind of pointless at times, though. I was fighting against, like, that swamp monster or whatever, and, like, the teammates were just getting their butts kicked. Like, they literally did almost nothing. I did all the work. But then later, when they were talking about it in, like, the tavern, like, before they were going up, like, they were like, hey, he did all this, so they gave me all the credit anyway. So it looks like they knew that those guys suck, because they were talking about how awesome Clive was when he took down that monster. So it is what it is there. I like that. I think this finally puts Final Fantasy back in terms of brand new Final Fantasies, not Final Fantasy VII Remake, not Integrate, not anything like that, but it finally puts Final Fantasy back in the real game of the year discussion. Like, Final Fantasy 15 didn't quite hit that for everybody. I'm not sure if it was even in there in the Game Awards. I'll double check. But I think that now with this game, you have a legit game of the year contender up there with games like Resident Evil 4 Remake, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I think Starfield could end up there. There's a lot of great games that released this year. And I think that Final Fantasy 16 is going to be right up there with them. And I think for some people might even be the best game. I think for a lot of people will be their game of the year pick. But I think that this is actually the first time in a long time that we can say that we have a bona fide Final Fantasy, new Final Fantasy, not a remake, not something else before, but a brand new Final Fantasy game that is a legit true Game of the Year contender or could win Game of the Year with this title. But that all begs the question, what's the Metacritic going to be? Because that's also going to be a factor into things. Not the only factor, as we've seen with games like Death Stranding be lower rated than so many games, but all of a sudden vault up to the top of everyone's list out of nowhere for no reason. But this game is going to review better than that game because this game's actually good. So with Final Fantasy 16, when it comes down to it, I think that this could be a high 80s, low 90s. I'm kind of guessing maybe a 90 or 91 Metacritic. That's the range that I'm guessing. I wouldn't be surprised if it dipped lower. Wouldn't be surprised if it was a bit higher. I think that highly of this. But the things that we have to know here is that, can it keep that pace for the whole time? How's the side content? How's everything going to play out with more of the open-ended areas? How is the combat variety going to be later down the line? How are all the things going to meld to create a really good and cohesive experience for 30, 40 hours, however long people play the game and the content? Now, we do know about a number of updates for the game, and I think that that's going to help out. They are doing some performance tuning to help out as well, so people will have those updates maybe by the time that the awards start doing. People will start talking like, okay, got to update, plays better. There's also a new game plus mode that has been 100% confirmed. There is a day one patch. It's very small, you don't need it, but it's there. And they did say that there wouldn't be a day one patch, so they apologize for that, but it seems like they maybe found a few different things. So there you go, man. I mean, they're gonna have that, but I think that the biggest thing here when it comes down to it is that they're really trying to make sure that this game has the best launch possible. And Yoshi P and his team, they have their Final Fantasy 16 bundles in Japan. This game is shooting up the charts in Japan as well. I reported right here on the channel that it actually surpassed The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom on Amazon Japan. People are getting excited for that. So I think that this game is going to do well for right now at this point. But as the PS5 grows in install base and more people go out there, maybe even buy a PS5 for this game, it's going to do well over time. And I think not at this point, it can sit very much alongside Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. We'll have to wait and see how good that game is. I mean, if that game comes out and it's like a 95, 96 or something crazy, right? If it's a drastic improvement over FF7, which it definitely could be, then maybe FF16 gets lost a little bit in that. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be really good. I think both of these games can kind of sit side by side and say, hey, if you want more of this experience, you can do that. If you want both, you can do both, which that's me. I'm going to do both. So I think overall, man, this is just great. This is just great to hear. I'm very happy for the team team and Yoshi P. I'm very happy that they're able to get this done, you know, and I think that some of the things that I did want to go over is the Final Fantasy mode. And that is a hard mode that you can access after completing the game and selecting New Game Plus. So that will be there. Genki is reporting on this. There's also higher level enemies, level cap raised to 100, ultimate weapon available for crafting, level, possessions, and abilities all carried over, gold trophy for completion. So that stuff is all in there. To me, that's very valuable. That's very good at things. In order to get a better rating, you have to have that New Game Plus. You have to have those things that carry over, good replay value, because this is not going to be a super long Final Fantasy game. So I do like that. I do like that they've done that, and I think that it's going to put it right there with the best games of the year. Maybe for some, the best game of the year. So what are your thoughts on the FF16 demo? What are your thoughts on the game? Are you guys going out there and picking it up? I know I am day one. I think I have a review code coming in, but I'm buying a physical edition as well. I want to support the team. I want to support Yoshi P and his team and everything. The team at Square Enix, they've done a great job with this game and with the marketing and with the lead up and getting people to kind of say, okay, this is here. Final Fantasy is back and it's better than ever. New Final Fantasy, new characters, new story, new combat. It's back, and it's really good on PS5. I mean, I can even see this game when it gets released for PC going dummy on there as well, especially with like mods and other type of stuff there. I mean, I'm pretty sure people on PC would go nuts for this type of game. So I think that this game has a long life in front of it. So what are your thoughts on everything here when it comes to Final Fantasy 16, the gameplay, the demo, the lead up? Let me know in the comment section below. Also, make sure you check out our other Final Fantasy 16 videos and other RPG videos right here on the screen. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you for the next one. Peace.